Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen King. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and founder of Mergent Apps. I've been working with nonprofits for over 35 years in both fundraising, marketing communications, and direct response. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about mobile marketing to millennials and really trying to focus on how to capture the attention of the three-screen generation. First things first, I don't like to use the word marketing a whole lot anymore. I think 20 years ago we were doing marketing. 10 years ago that became communicating, and today we're really in the business of engaging. And you'll note that I use the verb here because this is really active back and forth sport. And it's really important to understand this change, and as we go through the presentation today, I'll explain it more. But I think we all understand that it's no longer a one-way marketing plan that we just go after folks without really thinking about how they're going to be communicating and engaging back with us. Real quick, some five fun facts about millennials. You probably already know these, but they always kind of good way to start. 83% sleep with their mobile phone. And as somebody who sleeps with his mobile phone, I don't find that particularly unusual, but I think it really points to the ubiquity of the mobile device in people's lives. And of course, it's not that people are necessarily texting in the middle of the night. I've now replaced my own alarm clock and watch with my mobile phone. But it's an interesting statistic in the sense of being able to explain how people really relate very deeply to their mobile device. 40% have at least one tattoo. I guess that means 60% don't. I actually thought a lot more millennials had tattoos than that, but I think it is actually kind of indicative of how millennial generation really, it's an active, having a tattoo is actually an act of committing and an act of engagement. So it's just kind of a nice, interesting fact to kind of help get your head around how people are looking at themselves in the world. They own 2.4 million mobile devices each. I think that also demonstrates pretty much that that's from a tablet to a phone to a music device. Lives are really dominated by mobile devices, much more so than they are by computers and the television at this point. U.S. millennials are the most ethnically diverse generation in recent history. And I think that's important because I can't say how many times I've been working with nonprofits, and the message has always been, how do we communicate with minorities and other ethnic groups? And now we have no excuse not to. In the past, it wasn't necessarily that easy. Now the tools are in our hands, and it's really up to do it. The next kind of fun fact for me, at least, was that millennials, I read somewhere, were switch between devices 47 times an hour. I have actually no idea if this is true or what it means, but it was an interesting fact. And I think the real point of that is, as we start to think about how to communicate and engage with folks, that we have a very little amount of time to actually make that engagement. And so how you speak, the volume, the tenor, the way you communicate in that short period of time is actually essential to your communications. Before getting into the meat of the presentation, the point I want to make is that you're really only as old as you act. And we kind of talk about strict generational behaviors. Somebody in the millennial group does this, and somebody in baby boomer generation does that, and really there's a lot of crossover. It's all statistics and generalizations, and there are plenty of baby boomers like myself who use technology much more similarly to the millennials, and there's certainly millennials who behave substantially differently than their peers. So really, when you're thinking about mobile strategy, I would strongly advocate that you don't necessarily have a millennial mobile strategy and then something else. Is that base your mobile strategy and build it around the people who are really using it, who are most exemplified by the millennial generation. First of all, the reality, and you're already deeply into mobile, and so you can't really say that you don't have a mobile play. You're already there. When we look at search, Right now, the amount of search is on mobile is beginning to exceed that done on the desktop. Communicating, there are 5 billion text messages a day going out. Theoretically, you're doing some of that, let's hope. Certainly all sorts of levels of communications from you are going straight to people's phones. Mobile web surfing is obviously a big on the rise, and again will soon dominate over the desktop. Email, most people now are reading at least one pass of their email on their phone. Video, YouTube, again, all over, really becoming dominated by video. Facebook, Twitter, again, all of these activities are really being on the mobile device. So the question really is, and certainly actually going back to activities, people are using apps all the time. If you have an app, you're certainly obviously into mobile. But the real point is that any marketing you do that isn't print is really probably being looked at a mobile device already. So the real question is not when are you going to engage your millennials with mobile. The real question is how are you going to purposefully do it. And so again, most people are there. Most people aren't doing anything remotely close to what they should be in terms of full engagement. And part of what we're going to walk through today is how do you get to that point. Thinking about mobile devices, amongst all of the various digital communication tools we have, it used to be originally the television was considered the first screen, and then the computer came around and was going to be the second screen, and kind of early on we started talking about mobile devices as the third screen, and I guess the third, fourth, and fifth if you look at phones and tablets and other devices. One of the changes you're seeing now is that Coca-Cola marketing folks, for example, are really beginning to push thinking inside as the mobile device is really the first screen, and all the other screens are derived from that. I'm not sure mobile is so ubiquitous in terms of what people do that I'm not sure even talking about it as primacy is that helpful, because it really has become, in most ways, the dominant way we communicate. Each screen is valuable in its own way, but now as you start to put together a mobile strategy, you really need to be thinking about somebody possibly watching a spot on TV while watching a YouTube video, while doing something when they're searching something on their iPhone. So really, you need to start to think about not just these separate screens, but really how they all work together. One of the challenges, of course, is that each screen is in competition for attention. So if you think of American Idol and how you're watching American Idol and you're texting your vote, and you may be watching a separate YouTube at the same time. So really packaging your mobile pieces in a way that are catching attention from the other devices is pretty key. One of the other things about mobile is that we're really at the beginning of the mobile revolution, so it feels like we've had our iPhones or our Android phones for a while, but the reality is that they are becoming more and more powerful in many ways, not just for communicating or playing games or reading email, but these devices will become more and more the center of how we control other devices around ourselves. First things, I think, in thinking about how to market folks across mobile and really across any channel is really to understand who you're trying to communicate with and what you're trying to communicate or have them do. First of all, the who. Generally, most nonprofits are always thinking, I have to have the most dedicated people in the world, and I don't care too much about the others. But that never actually happens. So really, it's worthwhile breaking down people into a couple different groups. First of all, you have the tribe, which are your hardcore folks. They're the people who are going to go out and they're going to donate and they're going to volunteer and they're going to do all sorts of things for you. Those are obviously the people you want to get as engaged as possible. Mobile is a great tool for that, and a little bit later we'll talk about how apps are especially good at targeting these particular groups of people. You have the listeners. These are the people who are tuning into your message. They're not necessarily doing anything with it, but they certainly will feel moved by your message, engaged by your message, aren't necessarily call to action. You've got passersby, and those are the people who see your message, possibly register, possibly not. This group is really, kind of focused on long-term brand building and awareness. So when there is an issue possibly that is more engages them more, they'll know who you are. And then the final group, and most nonprofits, for some reason, or many nonprofits I've worked with, kind of forget that mobile devices are really a great way of reaching out to constituents. And so actually thinking about mobile devices for constituent engagement and delivery of services is actually a really pretty important tool when you start to, or approach when you start to think about mobile. In terms of the what, donating on the phone right now, mobile, I strongly doubt, specifically with millennials, that it's a winning strategy, and I would actually encourage you not to worry too much about trying to make money off of the people you're engaging with at this point in time. So it has nothing to do with millennials. It really has to do with the age, the timing, the income levels, this timing in their life cycle. So I'll even go out and say, in terms of, say, text to donate, I think unless it's a rare occasion where you've got an event or a crisis, it may work, but the details of text to give are so unsuccessful in terms of most nonprofits. I'd really stay away from donations per se. What you really want to be looking at is you're using your mobile efforts to really get people to promote the organization, to volunteer, and also to use your services. First, in terms of building your mobile strategy, here are the no-brainers. Here are the things that are easy to implement. You should be doing them. You should have already probably been doing them, but it's a quick list to go through. First of all, your emails. Given how much email is now read on a mobile device with a much smaller screen than your PC, you really need to make your messages shorter, sweeter, clearer. They need to be compelling. They need to grab people. You can't bury the lead way down in the message. I'm always amazed at this point at the long email messages I continue to get, as if I'm going to really scroll endlessly to get to the bottom of the message. So it's the number one thing you should be doing. Now, you can optimize for mobile. Honestly, at this point, I would probably make that change across all of the email you send. Same thing with social media. You need to make sure that it's interesting, pithy, or compelling, and you really need not to make it too long or too cumbersome to get through. Facilitating sharing is essential, and you need to do that both in if you're building out your mobile website, if you're doing apps, anything you're doing, sharing is key to being really able to amplify your message. Many people are doing this okay, but you really need to focus on why people would share and really implement a sharing practice. One of the things, probably the key thing here that you should be doing is making sure that your website is optimized for mobile. And I'm amazed at how most organizations are not optimized, and it's at this point doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Almost everyone is using some form of content management system. Most content management systems now have mobile templates that allow you to convert parts of your site to mobile optimized versions. And one of the things, when we're saying here mobile, we're not just talking, of course, about smartphones, but also about tablets. And so there's not just one size fits all. So one of the things that you need to do is make sure that your templates really work with a number of different kinds of sizes of devices. The other thing about this, one of the realities is when people were building websites way back when is that we added everything but the kitchen sink. So most people's websites, most organizations' websites now have hundreds, if not thousands, or tens of thousands of pages. That kind of promiscuity in terms of content and data doesn't work for the mobile phone. So one of the things that mobile will really focus you to do is pare down your message, so what you're presenting is not only short and sweet, but it's also the most valuable and most compelling content you have. And then as long as you have something to say, really SMS and text messaging is very key to any mobile strategy. I'm really surprised at how many nonprofits really don't leverage texting much or at all. And given that there are 5 billion text messages a day just in the United States alone, and much of that is from corporations and brands. You really need to start to think about how to use it. It's a great, compelling, direct way of engaging your users. Now, on the mobile side of stuff that requires a little bit more gray matter, to really build out your mobile strategy, you need to really think a little bit deeper, and there's a lot of challenges. And this is one of the reasons nonprofits have probably adapted mobile strategies much less than other folks, as that it requires some time, in some cases some money, but it's something you really have to address. The first thing is apps. There's a lot of people talking about apps. Our company is especially involved in building out apps, but it's important. Just having an app is pretty much a pointless exercise if you don't do two things. One is that you need to build applications that really are engaging and not on a one-time basis, but almost become habit forming. And some organizations have that and some won't. So you really need to address whether that fits what you're doing, assuming that there is something that you can do, whether it's delivery of constituent services or some sort of engaging material. Then you need to, you should definitely be building that out, because if you can get yourself on somebody's handset and become part of their daily lives, you've really created a connection that you can't do any other way. You can't do it via a web app. You can't really do it via SMS. So what you put into your apps does matter. The other piece is that if you're going to, you really need to integrate your applications across all of the different functions that you have. So everything from email to text promotion to sharing really needs to be part of it. It needs to be part of an overall plan. And you can tie this into all sorts of kinds of other of your media. I'll discuss that in a minute. One of the challenges you're going to run into is the fragmented market. And the fragmented market is the challenge is you've got Apple and Android and BlackBerry and Windows, and then now you've got HTML5. You've got different sizes of devices, and this is actually one of the things we focus on, is actually providing tools to kind of leverage a single code base to make it easier to get out to the various handsets without having to do a different version for each one. It's one of the biggest challenges you run into, and something, if you don't have the ability to kind of promote to everything, you really need to kind of think about which devices and which operating systems you should really focus on. One of the interesting things, especially, this is changing now, but in our industry, almost everyone has carried a BlackBerry, and we're very slow to an iPhone or Android devices. And so understanding of the market was a little slow, in that BlackBerry was never all that good with apps. And so part of what you need to think about is your experience with your device necessarily reflective of the people you're trying to reach, especially in this case the millennial group. Integration of the multi-screen environment. This is actually important for some organizations, especially if you're doing any direct TV, any YouTube kinds of promotions or marketing, in the sense that how somebody might use their iPhone and use their iPad or use their iPhone while watching television, for example, on DirecTV. The ability to, in the past, you would have somebody possibly put a URL down at the bottom of the screen. Well, now you can have, obviously somebody text a message that they get a URL in which they can run an app, or they can call directly from their phone. So there's lots of different things you can do with the multi-screen environment. So especially if you also have events, there's a lot of different things that you should be thinking about. So integration at that point is pretty important. Probably even more important for most other organizations is really integration with other media. And when you think about all the other activities that you do, how can you incorporate mobile to have value both for those other media as well as for mobile. And one example, for example, that I typically use is if you think about your telemarketing efforts and you're spending all sorts of money and time calling out, you say your outbound telemarketing service, when you're connecting with people, that's pretty much the end of the relationship. If you don't provide them another way, you might bill them, or you might send an email back to them, but it's a perfect opportunity to actually promote mobile services by either sending them an app, getting the permission to send them text, etc. Integration with other services. This is kind of the future of where mobile is going. So any kinds of other data services you have, whether it's information that they can look up or tracking that they can do if they're recording information about themselves, especially in services that you might be providing for constituents. So thinking about how to integrate what you're doing, not outside of just a simple marketing communications message, but actually really delivering value is really quite important. The other, kind of the final thing, really the hardest nut, I think, for most organizations to crack, and actually the single most important, is really doing tracking, analysis, and creating numbers-driven action. And one of the biggest things is because of the fragmented market, and this goes now beyond just devices, but to different social networks, the web, mobile devices, all the things that you're working on, it's harder and harder to track performance because there's so many things going on. That said, the people who can put together a tracking and analysis program, whether it's looking how their donors are responding to text messaging or how many people downloaded apps or how many people are communicating in various ways, is really going to be the key to creating your most successful strategy. This particular seminar is too short on kind of explaining how to do this, to best do this, but really it's something that if you have the budget capacity, you really should take on, because it's going to be essential for success. Kind of wrapping up here, one of the things about engaging that I see many nonprofits do right now is that they're doing all the talking, and this is true not just of mobile but of social media generally, but basically looking at it still as an old marketing tool where you're communicating one direction, and this is not about that at all. You need to be listening to people, and you need to be and you're hearing what they're having to say out in the market, but it's also important that you're not just listening, to the people you're engaging with, but you actually do create a back and forth dialogue. And the other point on that is that it's not just a back and forth dialogue amongst between you and the other person, but it's between your entire community. So really building a community that's communicating with each other and with you, and engaging them in actions that you really want them to begin to take is really key to both your mobile and your social efforts. So some parting thoughts in terms of your mobile strategy with millennials. All of the pieces that we've talked about, you really need to focus on being creative. And sometimes that's a challenge for nonprofits. We get into our messages of, very flat, not necessarily creative approaches to how we describe what we do, and that there's so much competition for attention that you really need to sort out how to position your cause in a creative way that stands out. You also need to be innovative. You need to focus on how to use technologies in new and different ways. Again, that can often be a challenge for nonprofits, but the organizations who can really focus on providing a new service or new way of thinking about how to connect with other people will be the people who stand out, who are successful in the mobile environment. And finally, you really need to focus on being genuine. When you're talking about engaging with people, it's one thing when you're doing old-fashioned marketing where you're positioning your organization in certain ways, and you didn't necessarily have to present yourself in a way of communicating back and forth with people. As soon as you get into that engagement, you really need to make sure that you're not creating visions of your organization that, or ways of communicating about it or talking about it that really aren't genuine. And so people will see through that now, and it's an important value of the millennial generation. So it's important that you focus on that. Hopefully you found this valuable. Feel free to drop me an email if you have any thoughts you want to discuss with me. You can be reached at sking@emergentapps.com. Thank you for your time.